People rarely just wake up one morning and decide they don't respect you anymore. It's almost never this sudden explosive event. Instead, losing respect, it's usually a quiet, almost invisible shift in our everyday interactions. That shift, it happens way before you actually notice it. It creeps in. You might start seeing these really subtle behavioral changes from the people around you, and sometimes you literally can't even pinpoint the exact moment it happened. But, and this is key, there is always a reason. Maybe they start interrupting you constantly or kind of brushing past your boundaries or treating your firm decisions like they're just casual suggestions. What's absolutely crucial to understand here is that people's perception of you is shaped less by what you say and much more by what you repeatedly tolerate and reinforce. So, in today's explainer, we're going to investigate 7 psychological patterns that quietly change how people perceive you. Let's get right into it. All right, let's dive into our first section. Boundaries, approval, and credibility, the foundations of how you are handled. Okay, imagine you're in a situation where you tell someone, hey, don't speak to me like that, right? You've set a verbal boundary. But what actually happens if they do it again? Maybe you get upset, you explain yourself, but ultimately nothing changes. The next time they cross that line, you just kind of tolerate it again? Well, this illustrates a core psychological reality. A boundary is not simply something you announce, it's something you consistently enforce. When your actions don't match your standards, like, say, staying in a room for an extra hour after you literally just said you'd leave if they were disrespectful, you are actively teaching others that your boundaries are totally negotiable. Your words stop carrying weight. And it's not because they're evil, but simply because you've essentially trained them to ignore you. Now ask yourself this, does your sense of security depend on constantly receiving reassurance from other people? Now, wanting reassurance is totally human, but when you rely on it entirely, things start to shift. If someone disagrees with you and you immediately change your position just to keep the peace, you are giving away your personal power. You start wondering if you did something wrong the absolute second they seem even a little bit distant. Look, there is a massive difference between someone disagreeing with you and someone controlling you. And the solution isn't to just stop caring about people entirely. It's realizing that you can absolutely value someone's opinion without making that opinion your ultimate authority. Because when you fold the second someone pushes back, you're showing them that their reactions have an enormous influence over your behavior. And this dynamic, it really builds. Think about these common phrases. I'm going to change. I'll be there. I won't let that happen again. What happens when these are just empty words? If your promises consistently fail to predict your actions, people will eventually stop relying on what you say. Repeatedly failing to deliver on what you claim, it completely destroys your credibility over time. Actually, simply saying, I can't do that, is often way more powerful than saying absolutely and then failing to deliver later. True credibility isn't built on making these giant, impressive statements. It's built on repeated behavior and making only the promises you can actually keep. Your reputation is built in reality, not in potential. All right, moving on to the next part, disrespect and the proof trap. The cycles we trap ourselves in. Just look at how this crazy loop works. Step 1, they make a joke at your expense. Step 2, you object to it, clearly stating you don't like it. Step 3, they just laugh it off. And step 4, by the very next day, everything goes completely back to normal. Sure, you communicated a boundary, but the pattern remained totally unchanged. You're basically stuck in a loop that teaches the other person they can disrespect you, and, well, nothing really happens. So, how do we break this loop? Well, sometimes you simply change your level of access, attention, or participation. If someone repeatedly ignores a clearly communicated boundary, you don't always need to have yet another exhausting argument. You really don't have to convince them to respect it. You just have to decide what you will no longer participate in. It's a real game changer when you understand the deep contrast between demonstrating competence and desperately trying to convince everyone you're competent. You might think that constantly advertising how smart, successful, or powerful you are earns respect, right? But it actually often does the exact opposite. Real confidence doesn't require a PR campaign. When you constantly insist on proving yourself, you actually plant doubt in other people's minds. The strongest proof is simply what you consistently produce. This brings us to the next section, emotional levers and false power, triggers, reactions, and fear. Now, I want to challenge you a bit here. Can someone predict exactly what will make you angry, jealous, insecure, or desperate? If they know that ignoring you makes you chase them, or that one specific comment makes you spend an hour defending yourself, they've essentially discovered your emotional pressure points. When the exact same triggers repeatedly control your behavior, other people learn exactly how to push your buttons. Real emotional control isn't magic. It's simply creating a gap between what happens and what you do about it. Now, this doesn't mean becoming an emotionless robot. It just means pausing. That critical gap gives you the extremely valuable power of choice. It literally takes the remote control right out of their hands. We have to look at the contrast here. On one side, we had the illusion of power through fear, using aggression, volume, intimidation. But on the other side, we have genuine respect, which is built through competence, consistency, and self-control. You really don't need everyone to fear you. What you need is to become someone whose words and actions actually carry weight. And that leads us to our final section, the uncomfortable truth. When losing respect means you are growing. If you ever feel like someone suddenly stopped respecting you, don't immediately ask how to make them respect you again. Instead, ask yourself what actually changed. Did you stop constantly pleasing them? Did you start saying no? Did you become less available? If they pull away because of these things, honestly, they weren't actually respecting you at all. They were merely respecting the version of you that was most convenient for them. Which brings us to a really critical question that we all need to ask ourselves. Are you trying to earn someone's respect, or are you trying to become someone you respect yourself? Because when your words match your actions, when your boundaries have real consequences, and when you finally stop desperately seeking approval, you literally no longer have to demand respect. Your consistent behavior starts to naturally communicate it for you. I want to leave you with this final thought. The absolute most revealing thing about a person isn't how they treat you when you give them what they want, it's how they treat you when you finally say no. So what does this all mean for you? Think deeply about that dynamic in your own relationships. When you finally draw the line, who stands with you and who walks away?